Hello and welcome back to the weekly English shooting live stream. Thank you so much for joining. Of course, all of the regular people, again, thanks for sticking with us and joining on T so regularly. But for anybody new, welcome. This is an interactive live stream. You can use the chat box below, you can get involved, have your say, have your opinions, and even ask questions. The main sort of focus and ethos of this channel is helping as many people as possible get into this sport, or even just find that this sport exists. So if you have any questions about getting into the sport, what gun you should buy, which range you should or maybe shouldn't use, then please feel free and I'll try and cover as many questions or even topics that you want to bring up as possible. And more importantly, don't forget to hit that like button. I'm going to keep saying it throughout the stream. Hit the like button, it's free, it takes less than a second to do, and you probably hear this all the time, not just from me but from other channels, but it makes a massive difference to the algorithms and the analytics with YouTube. And the more people that engage, that like, that subscribe, comment, message, whatever, it pushes videos up in front of people, and that's what allows people to find this sport and hopefully, licensing issues aside, able to get into it and start their sort of shooting career. But I hope you've all had a fantastic week. Obviously there's some much bigger news going on at the moment outside of firearms licensing and shooting in general. Anybody, I don't know why you would be sat watching this stream, but anybody within Ukraine at the moment, stay safe. Got a full support, and yeah, let's hope that this situation does sort itself out and certainly doesn't escalate. But we could talk a lot about the you know, shooting and firearms, where Ukraine is concerned. But I thought maybe let's have a little bit of a break from the impending doom that is being put out there across the news, and maybe a little bit slightly different impending doom when it comes to firearms licensing. This is, of course, a recurring theme more recently because there's so many different updates that come in. There's new developments, sort of more of the same, but the more we learn, the bigger picture we get, and I want to try and pass all of that information on to you guys. I did see somebody actually commented and said I do seem to cover strange topics. I mean, I think it's pretty important that you know, when getting into the sport and taking part in the sport within the UK, firearms licensing is pretty imperative. So any big issues or big news around that is pretty, I think, common sense topic to pick. And saying also the same person, why would it collapse? Well, we're going to get into that. This isn't necessarily my view of whether it will or won't collapse, but we will get onto this. This is actually an article that BASC put out today, and their wording seems to get stronger and stronger. Their outlook seems to get even more pessimistic every update that they put out, so we will cover that in full. Tagged onto that is a little bit of an update, or a bit more of an inclination of what's going to happen with firearms licensing fees, which again affects all firearms owners here within the UK. Of course, you have your initial application fee, you then have your renewal, your variation fees, you know, even RFDs pay fees to be able to have their registered firearms dealer certificate. We've got some more pessimistic news to touch on, which is the continued seizures of firearms for seemingly no good reason. A quite frankly bonkers story that has come out of Field Sports Channel TV. It just beggars belief what is going on at the moment. But some more, let's say, positive news. We're going to be talking about the British Shooting Show. Of course, one of the largest shooting shows here within the UK was the weekend just gone. I was able to make it there for the Friday and the Saturday, but there's, you know, like, well, it seems like a bit cliche that everyone's got to take a dig at the Great British Shooting Show each year, but there's been a lot of, I think, backlash and a lot of comments and conversation generated within various forums, online, and even within the comment sections of the British Shooting Show's posts. So I wanted to give my sort of review of it, and maybe hopefully some constructive feedback going forward, and certainly some very positive news. Tomorrow, myself and Connors, we're flying out to, well, I say we're flying out to Northern Ireland, we're actually going via Dublin, but we're making our way over to Northern Ireland to visit Nizza. For those of you that don't know, that is where there are a number of handguns for UK PSA members to be able to use. Obviously, on the mainland, we're not allowed to have handguns, or we're not allowed to have non-long barreled handguns or centerfire non-long barreled handguns. So it's really the only opportunity. This is a sort of a collaboration between the UK PSA, which is the IPSC franchise for for Great Britain, and then there's the NIPSC, which is the Northern Ireland franchise of IPSC. It was a collaboration between the two, and of course with Nizza to make this happen. We went out there a while ago, pre-COVID, a number of years ago, and this is the first time going back. And as Connors and I actually signed up as full members, we're going to have access to a few more guns as well, but more on that a bit later. Plenty of people joining the stream, so again, a big thank you for joining us this evening, and of course, don't forget, hit that like button. It does make a difference. So, $1 million question: is firearms licensing going to collapse? Is it possible for firearms licensing to collapse? Personally, I think it's very possible. What would lead to it? Well, what we've seen at the moment is due to a variety of reasons. A number of firearms licensing departments have stopped accepting new applications, and some that are even accepting them are admitting that there's like an 18-month backlog and that they are focusing on renewals. The reason that these places focus on renewals when times get hard and they have a massive backlog is because renewals are the most important. These are people already with firearms that have come up to their 5-year renewal period, and they need to have their suitability reassessed. And what you don't want happening is people out there with firearms that there are, say, more new medical issues or other issues surrounding their suitability that go unflagged. They go past this 5-year period, and then we were talking about this the other week. It could get to the point where some people are 6, 7, maybe even 8 years into their renewal. Well, they need to have that suitability reassessment, and if that doesn't happen, you are potentially allowing people to be in possession of firearms that are otherwise unsuitable, and you get instances like Plymouth, although that wasn't actually anything to do with renewal. That was just quite clearly handing certificates back to somebody that really shouldn't have them. So that's why they prioritize on the renewal. So how would it collapse? Well, if they've already stopped initial applications because they don't have the resource or the funding and the manpower to be able to process them, and they are focusing on renewals, what happens if they reach the point where they are snowed under with renewals? At some point, they would have to raise the white flag and say to the Home Office, or say to the Chief of Police from Firearms Licensing, we can't do this. Right, we've got 2-3 years worth of backlogs for renewals. We are not protecting the public because these are going unchecked. There's people with firearms that we don't know if they are suitable or not, or we don't know if we should allow them to have firearms or not. And that is going to be the collapse. They almost have to step away, and another organization or the Home Office is going to have to step in. This isn't something that you, certainly on the renewals, that you can just hit the pause button. You can do that with applications because, well, they're people they don't have a certificate, they don't have firearms. So in terms of a public safety perspective from the police, there's no greater risk of to the public the longer it goes on without them having their applications processed. But renewals very much is a public safety concern, and if they get too backlogged, if they get too overrun, that is what could cause the potential collapse of the firearms licensing system. And some really interesting information from various sources, people that have messaged, and I do encourage, please do message, email if there's anything that you think I should be aware of, or that other people should be aware of. I do read every single email and message. I can sometimes be a bit slow getting back to people, but I do read everything as soon as it comes through. So anything you want to share or pass on will get seen. And a lot of this has come from other third parties doing exactly that. So a really interesting case, and one quite close to home for me, is Hampshire Firearms Licensing. We all know that they looked up and said that they wouldn't be doing any new applications until the 20th of March, although I have had someone get in contact, and this wasn't for professional or vocational reasons. They have started, or they've had their interview with their FEO. So it does look like Hampshire, whilst they still aren't accepting new applications, some that were caught in the backlog that they didn't return, they are now looking into, and they are now processing. So that is a glimmer of hope. If they were completely snowed under with renewals and there was a risk that they were effectively going to collapse and they were no longer able to efficiently process renewals, they wouldn't be then doing initial applications that are stuck in their backlog. But very easy to see with Hampshire as a specific example how a firearms licensing department could collapse. Now, from various reputable sources, I had it confirmed, well, not confirmed, but I've had it rumoured that Hampshire are down to 3 firearm inquiry officers. Now, from the very first time that I had dealings with Hampshire, they've always seemed to have anywhere in the region of 6 to 8 firearm inquiry officers. So a county the size of Hampshire, with the high firearms ownership that Hampshire has, you know, it is one of the most densely populated sort of firearms ownership areas within the country. To have just 3 FEOs processing even just the renewals, you can see how, you know, it takes a set amount of time for them to do all of the checks, bring in the new guidance for giving out applications, the new suitability checks that the Home Office rolled in after Plymouth. You can see if things are taking longer, they're short-staffed, and the renewals are mounting up, then they're going to potentially face difficulties and have to call in external help. I've also had it confirmed through other people that they've said numerous times, FEOs have said, that it's not just COVID that is causing them or has caused them problems. Not only are they short-staffed, but they're saying that they are underfunded. Now, this could be a little bit of an agenda being played here, because it plays into another topic for this evening, which comes into the firearms licensing fees. Of course, any civil service department, any police department, they're always going to cry poverty, because, well, every department anywhere is always going to want a bigger budget and more money to play with. But this is a recurring theme that we have seen many, many times, firearms licensing departments saying that they don't have enough funds, and that's either allocated from the chief of police, which again, they have a limited pot of money to play with, which is why they're sometimes stingy on firearms licensing. So they're underfunded, they're under-resourced because they're down to 3 people. Again, you can start to build, and plus all the new guidance that they now have to follow, which is going to take even more time. Plus you've got Plymouth, which is making firearms licensing really go over and check that every T has been crossed and every I has been dotted. You're going back and double and triple checking stuff. So you can see how the workload mounts up, and there has to be a point, if they are not processing these renewals, if there are people going unchecked with firearms in their possession, that they have to call it quits, and it effectively collapses. Are we likely to see a nationwide collapse of firearms licensing? I don't think so at all. I think it would be potentially just isolated cases and isolated licensing departments. The really interesting thing, and something we've said many times before, is the disparity between firearms licensing departments. Some didn't have any effect from COVID. They were able to continue sort of seamlessly throughout the entire pandemic, where you have others like Hampshire that seem to really struggle. So the ones that are still being efficient, the ones that are still processing, well, they're going to continue processing. But these ones that are really snowed under-resourced, they could collapse. what is then going to be brought in place? What are they going to do? Because the Home Office can't just stop. They can't go, oh, okay, well, that firearms licensing is that's fucked. You know, we're just okay. Whole of Hampshire, you now don't need a certificate. They're not going to do something like that. What the emergency plan would look like, I have absolutely no idea. How they would suddenly pick it back up again, I don't know, but it is incredibly worrying. And of course, this isn't just my opinion on this matter. BASC, who are some of the most experienced people, the members of BASC, who are some of the most experienced out there, are saying very similar things. I mean, you know, the article that I'm referring to, the firearms licensing crisis continues. They're using words like crisis. We are at crisis point here. You know, that's not soft, cuddly, friendly language they're using, and straight in, you know, there is to be no doubt the firearms licensing system across England and Wales is in crisis. Inquiries coming into BASC are increasing exponentially, and veteran members of staff believe the delays have never been so bad, nor the system so close to collapse. Now, of course, the devil's in the detail. They're not necessarily saying the system is going to collapse, but it is very, very close, or the closest it's ever been. If things don't dramatically start to improve, it could potentially be a snowball case, and we could start seeing emergency measures coming into firearms licensing, which is just not going to help things at all. I know that's a pretty obvious thing to state. So yeah, are we going to see some firearms licensing departments collapse, whatever that looks like? I don't think it's I don't think we can rule it out. Things really haven't seemed to get better in some areas of the country for a very long time. You know, what it's going to look like if it collapses, I have absolutely no idea, and what the potential long-term knock-on effects are, I have no idea either. But the other interesting point within this article, which is, as always, a double-edged sword when it comes to firearms licensing and firearms in general. Fortunately, an opening has arisen that could force about improvements. We have received confirmation that the Home Office is beginning a review into the licensing system and licensing fees. This is the first time that we've had any sort of confirmation that there is going to be a review of the fees. We've seen the questionnaire put out by the police, and I called it straight away. The way that questionnaire was written, the phrases used, and the focus on the fees and the cost of firearms licensing, it was inevitable that they were going to start looking into increasing the fees and bumping the application fees up. Because reviewing the fees, I mean, you know, the optimists out there might want to say, well, what if they reduce the fees? Yeah, that's not going to happen. If I was a betting man, I'd be putting a lot of money that it is only going one way. But that seems to be the first confirmation that they are going to be reviewing the fees. And of course, with all of the issues, and I think it has highlighted in many, many cases, we've known it for years, but it really has exposed the cracks in firearms licensing. Something drastically needs to change. And again, I've always said that this is a double-edged sword. So many people have called for the Home Office guidance to be rewritten, for firearms licensing to change, and to have a big overhaul within firearms ownership in general and our firearms laws. But you have to be careful what you wish for, because it could end up being a lot worse, and not just a lot worse in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, but in the way they do things. It could make it a lot harder for people to get their certificates. It could make it a lot more expensive and a lot more prohibitive. So yes, we know that the firearms guidance needs a complete overhaul, but an overhaul to what? Now, BASC seem to be fairly optimistic about this, because it says it'll allow them to step forward and present a vision of what firearms licensing should and could be providing. Is it going to go the way that BASC wants it to? I don't know. Could we see some improvements? Most like, well, you know, I might have to eat my hat on this one, but I think I don't think it's going to be that hard to improve the system from where it currently is. So yes, not exactly the the most cheerful or happy news to start with, but obviously the Home Office is aware of it. I think that is step one. The Home Office knows that there is something up, that's the current system is just not working. We've said many times the plethora of things that they could bring in or do to help ease firearms licensing. General certificates, for example, let's get rid of the firearm certificate and the shotgun certificate. Let's have it all under one certificate. And once you get that certificate, you're allowed to buy as many guns of as many caliber or many different calibers as you want. Plenty of people that are going to object to it. In my mind, if you're able to, or a class system or a level system like they have out in Canada, in my mind, if you're able to own a 308, why can't you have a 223? Why can't you have a 22 LR? It just seems that would be the biggest gain. Of course, there were things like removing moderators from certification that was brought up within the FELWEG meeting. So things like that, again, is going to lighten the load and reduce the amount of paperwork going over firearms licensing desks. Ammunition limits, and requiring to note everything down on a certificate. Again, that would streamline stuff quite a bit. So yeah, that's the doom and gloom so far for firearms licensing. Let me know what you think about it, and yeah, we have to see and watch this one very, very closely. But let's have a look at what you guys are saying and anything that you've asked. I did see somebody asked about a different gun. That's it. Lantac or Chris AR-15-22? That's a loaded question. Personally, I would choose the Lantac. I would go for the LASF 15 over the Chris. The Chris Defiance, or the DMK, I think is the model number. Yes, and I know owners are already there furiously smashing their keyboards. Don't say anything nasty about my Chris. It's not my fault you bought the wrong gun. The Chris Defiance is a nice package overall. It's just not the most high quality. I've seen a number come in for repairs where things have just completely worn out. The Lantacs, customer service aside, the LASF 15 I think is great value for money. It's a quality gun, and it runs. It's built using the CMMG conversion kit, with Lantac have a hell of a lot of experience with, and I personally don't see the value for money of going for the Raven, but the LASF 15 is a solid option, and certainly if it was my money and I could only pick between the two, I would be going for the Lantac. I would even choose a Raven over the Chris Defiance. You're gonna get a lot more out of the gun long term. The Defiance, whilst this isn't a huge issue, the Defiance isn't mil spec, a lot of proprietary things in there, so just go for the Lantac. I think you'll be better all round. Or I would highly recommend getting in contact with Otto at Cotswold Classic Arms. I know so many of you say, you always tell me to get in contact with Otto and he's impossible to get hold of. Yes, good things come to those who wait. Otto builds a number of different guns in a number of different budgets, from his L119, which I think overall is superb value for money. And between that and a Lantac, I'd be going Otto all day long. Again, CMMG conversion kit, full mil spec, aero precision, receiver set, and they're cheaper. Believe they're a good few hundred quid cheaper than the LASF 15, and I think overall you are getting a better gun for the money. And plus, because Otto's building it, you can have it however you want. Any controls, components, upgrades, barrel choices, they will do it, and they won't shout at you or moan at you like Lantac will. Oh, there was something I heard the other day. Oh, sorry, it's time for the EnglishShooting beer review. And it really does taste like someone's pissed in my beer. I mean, I get the whole fruity flavours and all that, but just stop fucking with beer. So this is their Lost Lager in mango. Just, if I was at a pub and I took a sip from my drink and it tasted like that. I really would think someone spat or pissed in it. But it's open now, and you can't waste beer. And yes, I know Brewdog, they are, Satan. They are destroying, game shooting and sort of deer stalking estates up in Scotland. As I keep saying, this is left over from Christmas. I'm not going to throw it away. Once it's drunk, I won't buy any more. But yeah, stop fucking with all these flavours. Anyway, that's good beer spoil. That's my review of that one. So Lantec, there was somebody that wanted, what was it? They wanted to buy something, like a replacement part or something, and I really should have more information before I start saying this, but basically they got told to fuck off, which is a standard response, really. It's like, oh yeah, I've got one of your guns, I'm a valued customer, I need a service part for it, can you supply it? Absolutely fucking not. So I think they either ended up going, I can't remember where I even see it. It might have even been on Facebook. But yeah, basically, long story short, with Lantec, good guns, shit service. But if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you already know that. A lot of people talking about Ukraine, of course, something to watch very closely. Stephen Perry, you also end up in a situation where the certificate holder ends up in a position where they are, through no fault of their own, in illegal possession of a firearm. That is actually a massive point that I meant to cover with the whole collapse of firearms licensing, and that would be one of the keys to it. Instead of not necessarily people out there that haven't been checked or may be unsuitable now to hold firearms that aren't being reviewed, if your certificate expires, that's it. Like, you are now no longer legally in possession of those firearms. Now, what normally happens is the police will give an extension. That there is a set procedure to do that, but what we're seeing more and more, and this was a specific case in Devon and Cornwall, is that they had already gone through this sort of standard procedure of extending the license or putting it on like a temporary certificate, and they were basically in writing just saying, yeah, we know, just wait. So, technically, legally, it was expired, they weren't in lawful possession, but the police had basically written them a hall pass saying, yeah, don't worry about it. That would also lead to the collapse of firearms licensing if it gets to a point where they are literally so snowed under that they can't feasibly go out and extend people's certificates, and you start having hundreds, potentially even thousands of people that have expired certificates and firearms that they're no longer lawfully able to possess. I mean, just being able to store those guns could pose an issue. There's already a number of RFDs. There was one at the British Shooting Show. They did an interview with with Field Sports Channel TV. We'll get onto that video in a minute. And they said, look, we're full. We've had so many people come and book in their guns because of issues with Devon and Cornwall. We've run out of space. So what happens when the police armory fills up because the RFD's armories have filled up and there's literally no other place to store these guns? That would be an effective collapse of firearms licensing. And again, the Home Office would have to step in and try and, it could get to a point where they have to move in or pass in emergency legislation similar to that of COVID to say, right, in order to allow us to sort out this mess, we need to make sure that people are in lawful, change it so whilst their certificates are expired, they are still in lawful possession of firearms. It would take some pretty swift legislation to be able to do that. So yeah, people not being in lawful ownership of their firearms because their certificates have expired. Again, if firearms licensing reach a point where they're not able to process, that is an effective collapse. Somebody I did see, for some reason it's flicked to the bottom as it always does. Somebody saying if I was staying, that's it, Mr. E30, are you staying overnight in Northern Ireland? We will be. We're flying out there Friday evening and we're coming back Monday morning. So we've got 3 nights out in Northern Ireland. I'm not going to well, I'm not going to put out where we're staying for obvious reasons, but where we're staying as well isn't. Where we're staying is actually the main reason we're going out there, but I'm going to wait to see how that goes, and I may or may not be able to show more, show exactly why we're going out there. It isn't just for Nizza, and I'll just leave it at that. There is an ulterior motive, but we'll see how that goes, and hopefully I can share as much of that as possible. So I think we're going to be at Nizza definitely Saturday, and I think maybe even Sunday. But in the evenings, we'll be going elsewhere and having various talks with various people. And that's all I'll say for now. So exciting. If anything does happen, it will be cool, and I'll hopefully be able to share that all with you guys. B Smith. Nearly took 6 months for my certificate to be renewed, which meant I had to put my guns in storage for about 2 months. So I guess everyone is having the same problem. Yes, as we've just been talking about, Westminster sifted through their backlog very quickly. My last variation around 6 months ago was turned around in under a week. Same with land inspections, and I've currently got another variation in. Again, this isn't necessarily indicative of the entire firearms licensing. There are places, like you're saying, West Mercer, that are absolutely fine, and they're almost like stood there going, well, why is everybody else having such a problem? Which, like, again, it shows to me actually that necessarily the structure of firearms licensing isn't the issue. Maybe even the guidance isn't the issue. It actually comes down to management of each individual licensing department, and also the staff training and staff sort of knowledge and experience based. If some using the same mechanisms, the same guidance, and pretty much the same processes, other counties are still able to process applications, you have to look at what the sort of unique factors are within each firearms, or between firearms licensing departments. Yes, the location, the amount of certificate holders that a county covers, that's going to be a big thing. So it might just be the sheer numbers of applications or renewals that they're having to do. Perhaps West Mercer is a much smaller region. I don't know if it is or not over the off the top of my head, but there's some counties like Hampshire. I think it's 20 or 30,000 certificate holders. That's just what comes to the top of my head. I have seen there's some firearm licensing departments which have 5, so that's a quarter of some other counties. So that's a quarter of the renewals that they're going to be doing. Effectively a quarter of the new applications. It's a quarter of the workload. So if every chief of police is allocating, I know this isn't the case, but let's say every chief of police allocates the same amount of budget for each county's firearms licensing department, then of course a county that has 5,000 certificate holders for the same amount of money versus 20,000, well, of course, with the same pot of money to run it from, it's always going to be better where there's less numbers and less workload. Mark Allen, is there new legislation for GPs to now complete medical pro formas within 21 days? I've been advised to send in my August renewal by the end of this month. There is, it depends when you say new legislation. As far as I'm aware, there is no legislation forcing GPs to be able to do it. And that is actually in essence what the issue is, because GPs are just going, nah fam, we don't want anything to do with this. We don't want any liability. But there has been obviously a more recent change with GP forms. The GPs now, it's not the GPs, but you now have to have a completed GP form. So in terms of the legislation, and it's not necessarily legislation, but it is statutory guidance that has come in, which says you have to have your GP complete this form and be part of the application process. So that's what's changed, but there's no actual onus on the GP, which is why we're getting a lot turned around and say, no, we're not doing it, which causes even more issues. This was one of the issues that we saw with COVID, because GPs were doing jabs and boosters. they were prioritizing that. They weren't doing the GP forms for firearms licensing because they didn't think it was as important, which caused a backlog. You got places like Hampshire then going, look, we're going to shut applications because we don't want people overloading our GPs whilst they're doing these boosters. Again, ignoring the fact that there's private companies that are doing this, that were still doing it, and various GPs and private companies were throughout the entirety of COVID still functioning and still able to do shotgun and FAC medical forms. But we've covered that one, I think, enough by now. What else are you... Callum, are you going to IWA? I don't think this year. I don't even know when it is. Let's have a... I know that Neil from Rack and Load, we managed to catch up at the shooting show. There's actually a video coming out on that. We'll be talking about all the lovely videos coming from the British Shooting Show soon. Thursday 3rd to the 6th of March. Unfortunately not. We already have other plans, which I was going to cover a bit later, but I'll get on to now what one of those plans are. And it's actually attending a range that I've been meaning to go to for a very long time. Some of you remember that I've previously visited the Phoenix shooting range up in Barnsley. If you're near to Barnsley, 100% worth a visit. Whether you're an owner now, whether you've got certificates, or if you just want to go and try it. If you just want to go and try shooting, the Phoenix range, like, just go and do it. It's also a full Home Office approved club, and a very similar range, which is a little bit closer to me, just north of Birmingham, is the Double Juice firing range. Now, they've been open for a number of years. I've wanted to go up there and make a video because I think, again, anybody around the Birmingham area, this is going to be a huge asset to. They've got a Home Office approved club. They've got, I believe, a club range, and they've also got their pay and play range. So this is a range that, again, you don't need a license. You don't need to be a member. You can just, it's very American style. That's the best way that I can describe it, where you just pay and play. Of course, it's predominantly mini rifle because the mini rifle exemption, and you can see the sort of packages that they do. So yeah, you can go, 1 hour, 1 rifle, 100 rounds, everything included, and 40 or 50 quid depending on when you go in the week. Now, I know everybody that's in the shooting industry already has a certificate. They go, oh fucking hell, 50 quid to shoot 100 rounds, doesn't that only cost 6 quid? And you're like, yeah, you're missing the bloody point. This is for people that can come off the street, pick up a gun, and get into shooting. And I think, whilst it is commercial, these places, of my experience with the Phoenix shooting range, they don't have a problem in generating interest. There's actually a lot of people that, as soon as they get wind of places like this exists, they flock to it, and they're usually inundated. And that's great. That's more people, for 50 quid, they can go and experience shooting. And then that's usually the slippery slope. So why am I telling you about Double Juice? Well, they're having an open day. I'm pretty sure it's the 5th of March. I didn't have time actually to open my calendar, so I think I will already go. I forgot to check it before I started the stream. Yes, 5th of March. So they're having an open day on the 5th of March, and both myself and Connors will be going up there. So if you've wanted to check out Double Juice before, then 5th of March, they're throwing open the doors. Myself and Connors are going to be there. They've also just opened up a dealer account with Magload, which is part of the reason as well that we're going up there. So they are going to be stocking Magload. They're also going to have Magload upgrades on their rental rifles. And we should be supplying them as well with firing pins. Obviously, the sort of thousands of rounds that these guns go through a month, they want ultimate reliability because it's less downtime, it's less cost in servicing parts. So they're going to be doing a lot of testing of our stuff and a real test of our of things like our firing pins. And of course, when, and please stop messaging me about them, when the 1522 magazines come out, they will also be using those as well, because you think about it, you think you've got an issue getting hold of 1522 magazines. Yeah, try putting, I think they were saying that they put like 20,000 rounds through each rifle a month, or they're going through 20,000 rounds a month. Anyway, it's thousands and thousands of rounds, and they are churning through the magazine. So they want a magazine that lasts longer, and also one that is, you know, more often than not in stock. So yeah, they're now a Magload dealer that will be announced on Magload very soon, and they will be holding stock of it. So if you want to go in and go face to face and pick up something, and not have to, you know, wait for us to ship it out to you, then you can walk into Double Juice and get that. But yeah, we're going to be up there the 5th of March. I believe Otto from Cotswold Classic Arms is going to be there as well. So if you wanted to get hold of him, if you wanted to pin him to a wall and finally ask him to build a rifle, turn up on the Double Juice Open Day on the 5th of March. You'll be able to see the man himself and actually know that he does exist. And I think they're getting a number of other people up there, so it should be a great day. I'm obviously going to film it. I want to do a full tour of the facilities and really show what it's like. I think they do have a video on their website. Do they? Maybe. No, I've definitely seen a video somewhere on there, but either it's not loading or I'm just, oh, there we go. You will see what, if you've ever been to an American range, you will see what I mean. Yes, bullets, we like bullets. So you can see it's the standard sort of bay format, and also like self-retrieving targets, and they do have a nice selection of different guns. So you can see that, like, seriously, that could be in America quite happily and quite easily. But I believe they have two separate ranges, again, one for members and one for all the shooting experiences. But yeah, I'm hoping to be able to show you more when we go up there. Again, if you want to see Double Juice for yourself, open day on the 5th of March. And of course, that means I can't go to IWA. To be honest, it's something that I've wanted to do for many years, same as SHOT Show. I'm hoping at some point I will get out there, but unfortunately not this year. Captain Crack, our licensing system largely works for us. We just need a little more freedom on what we can own. I agree with you on the latter part of that. I don't know if our licensing system largely works for us. The fact that there is still no complaints process, there is actually no way to hold a firearms licensing apart from, you know, ending up in an appeal and in front of a judge. There's no mediation, and again, this is what I think a lot of the issues we're seeing is that firearms licensing can be pretty much a law to themselves. The independent police complaints commissions don't want to touch them. The MPs have no power over them, and you end up in this between a rock and a hard place. You know, if you want to talk about largely working for us, look at the black hole that voluntarily surrendering your firearms can leave yourself in. There's no legal mechanism to challenge it. There's no time period or guidance for the police to conclude a review when you voluntarily surrender them, and it leaves people in a black hole for sometimes years. So things like that, I think, absolutely need to change. And I think, you know, the way that it is written at the moment is that these departments shall issue a license if somebody meets the criteria, but if they don't, what recourse does somebody have? And this was actually another point of the BASC article, which was, let me just find, here we go. So BASC said a while ago, and this is a bit of an update to it, the situation has become so bad that some forces have publicly stated that they are unable to issue grants, instead focusing on the process of renewals. While BASC sought legal advice on this policy, the message we received was that any challenge would fail. And I think this is a big issue, that they have this, what BASC have called a statutory duty to issue certificates. They are, in a way, legally required to issue certificates. But when they shut up shop, there is no mechanism to challenge that legally or otherwise, and they can just go, yeah, we're not giving out applications. What are you going to do about it? I think there definitely needs to be more mechanisms that the police and firearms licensing departments can be held to account. There's a lot of talk of sanctions at the moment. Maybe there are sanctions that can be implemented, maybe even compensation if, they always have these service level, guidelines. We aim to process an application within 3 months. Maybe having some sort of compensation or penalty for every application that exceeds that. So, certainly if somebody requires a certificate for a professional or vocational reason, at the moment, if they don't hit that service deadline or that service aim of 3 months and it takes them 18 months, well, that could potentially be, a good 15 months in addition where somebody is losing income. They're losing, revenue towards their livelihood. Maybe have a mechanism that could be recouped. Make it more expensive for them not to do their job, because they're complaining about being under-resourced and underfunded. If there was a financial penalty to the licensing department for not meeting those standards, they're going to become even more underfunded. So that's just more motivation for them to be more efficient and to process applications quicker. Of course, it is an ultimate balancing act, because this isn't a process you want rushed. It has to be done properly. All of the boxes need to be ticked. Everything needs to be crossed and dotted. So, maybe if you bring in a financial penalty, you're going to get things rushed through. There's going to be mistakes, and there's even bigger consequences to that, as we saw in August last year. So, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, just fine them, give out compensation, but it's a balancing act. But there certainly could be more done to, let's say, weight it in the favour of applicants and certificate holders. We all know it's very much that we need them more than they need us, and it's very, very weighted in the favour of firearms licensing. I think as the law is written, if you meet that bar of suitability, you are given a certificate. That's the way it should be. It almost feels that firearms licensing departments try to do, or some firearms licensing departments tend to do everything they can to not give out certificates, and I think that's what needs to change. Instead of we don't want to give out certificates, it's who should we give certificates to, and sort of change that mentality and sort of change the outlook of some firearms licensing departments. Captain Crack, they didn't really stop over COVID either. That they're not using it as an excuse to hide behind. They're not using it as an excuse to hide behind for not doing their job. I think that's meant to read they are using it as an excuse. Again, with the Hampshire case, I think they're sort of leaning on this whole COVID thing, and maybe not wanting to let slip that they're down to 3 FEOs, that they're currently trying to recruit 6 FEOs. Again, this is something else that I've had said to me, that there was vacancies for new FEOs and they're trying to recruit them. So yeah, it might be like, shit, we're up shit's creek at the moment. We haven't got enough FEOs. We haven't got enough funding. Let's just blame it all on COVID. Personally, if that is the case, like, why? Right? If Hampshire came out and said, actually, the reason we stopped applications is because we've lost 2/3 of our staff, and we're just not, we're trying to recruit. Like, that's understandable. Blaming COVID, which, all restrictions have ended now, you don't need to isolate, you don't need to wear masks, this, that and the other, sort of saying, and we're not going to take on new applications until the 20th of March because of COVID, is like, WTF. But if they came out and said, look, we've had people leave, we're trying to recruit, we just can't do it fast enough, so until we've recruited new people, we're going to close applications, at least that's like a valid reason. Okay, you literally don't have the members of staff to do this job, you're not miracle workers, you can't process application if you don't have FEOs, and certainly you can understand there being a delay or a backlog when you've got, let's say, 8 or 9 FEOs worth of work and only 3 FEOs to do it. So it does seem really odd that they've gone with what I think is such a see-through excuse, when actually from what people are saying, there's sort of more valid excuses in the background going on. Oh, Captain Crack, no, West Mercer didn't use COVID as an excuse not to work. Well, they carried on, you're saying. I think I got the wrong end of the stick there. Silverback Gorilla Gaming, it took me 2 years to get a moderator on my Winchester 700 because apparently I couldn't have one due to health and safety, and no, I need it, and no need for it, even though I'm shooting near my livestock. They're playing a very, very dangerous game, turning down moderators based on health and safety grounds. Get your hearing checked. Like, it will pay dividends. David Kiddle, Caliber, for anyone desperately in need of some 1522 magazines, Caliber Innovation does have a load in at the moment. Get them while they're hot, because they won't be around for a while. that's well, they won't be around for long, and God knows when new ones are coming in. Hopefully the Magload ones are going to be here soon. I hope. Please stop asking, please stop calling, please stop messaging. Cheesecake, Silverstone charging nearly £200 to shoot their 2.2 vectors for half a day, so 50 quid is very fair. To be honest, like, name me something that Silverstone does do that's fair, apart from be fairly inadequate. But we'll move on. Sorry, did I say that out loud? But yeah, so we on to new topics. That's like, again, we will touch on, I'm sure we will touch this on on firearms licensing again, but there are more things to talk about, like firearms licensing. So there's an absolutely crazy story. Of course, there's been this, what did Field Sports call it? They totalitarian action because of police failings. I mean, like, Field Sports aren't fucking about with, getting off the fence, are they? But this story popped up, and it's just absolutely incredible. So, of course, we've heard a lot about a lot of seizures of firearms for seemingly no reason across Devon and Cornwall. Just basically officers go, we're here to take your guns because of Plymouth. And as we drilled in, actually what they were asking is for people to voluntarily surrender them, but they were posing it as a revocation when it wasn't. And people out there that complied and lost their guns and still haven't been given a reason. There's one, again, which Field Sports Britain, that is following that story very, very closely. He's like, I've been to court and they still haven't told me why they've taken my guns. I have no idea. Well, things have got to a whole new level of ridiculousness. So this video flashed up. So as you can see, they are at the British shooting show. This guy, Nigel Dunny from Cornwall, so he's within, Devon and Cornwall. Basically, police turned up, and the full story, I'll just read it off from here. He had an unexpected police visit after he sold one of his guns. Mr. Is it Donay? Anyway, Nigel good old Nige, says that the officers took his remaining guns because he couldn't produce his certificates. Now, you're probably thinking, right, okay, well, if you can't produce your certificates, why, like, of course they should take away the guns. Like, he's either not got a certificate or he's lost it. You need to be able to produce your certificate when the police ask. Apart from, if your certificate is with your firearms licensing department and it says being processed, I assume that's a variation or a renewal or something. But basically, he looked up and said, look, I can't give you my certificates because it's with you guys, and they took his guns. It's like, that's the level of ridiculousness that it's got to. They come and ask him, and I don't know why selling one of his guns triggered the visit, but it quite evidently did, to then be asked to produce his certificate, and I think quite reasonably saying, it's a bit hard for me to produce my certificates because it's with Firearms Licensing. Oh, well, you can't produce your certificate, so we're taking your guns. Like, that just shows that then starts to give weight to this. This isn't accidental. This isn't incompetence. Maybe. This is deliberate. They are going there to take people's guns regardless, and they are using, or in some ways fabricating, like, to me that's a fabricated reason. Like, you can't show me your certificate because it's with us. Oh, you can't produce it. Like, they are just ignoring the facts and taking the guns anyway. Very, very dangerous that things have, like, it's actually worse than not giving a reason at all, right? Because not giving a reason at all, there could be a reason. There could be something that you're not aware of that completely justifies the police in holding on to your firearms and reviewing your certificate, right? But actually saying the reason we're taking them away is because you can't produce your certificate because it's with Firearms Licensing Department being processed is just utter insanity. I hope that there is compensation coming this guy's way, because it is never a nice experience, take it from me, fighting the police in courts with anything to do with firearms licensing. It's not cheap. Even if you get your costs covered, you will end up out of pocket, and it's just a willful, like, just disregard of our firearms licensing law or our firearms laws here in the UK, or the processes involved with being a certificate holder. And it's the flip side. The police, certainly Devon and Cornwall, just seem to be making it up as they go along. Firearms owners, certificate holders have to be whiter than white. They have to do everything correctly, everything by the book, and even the slightest abnormality, like not having your licenses because they're being processed with Firearms Licensing, will get your tickets lost. Just an anonymous complaint can be enough now to get your certificates revoked. And the police, on the flip side, just seem to literally be clowning around with it. And again, this is part of the whole thing in terms of firearms licensing and a review. There is very little help or protection to certificate holders within these scenarios. So I really hope that he sought legal advice. I really hope that Field Sports have put him in touch with the right people, and he goes for compensation because of this just utter clusterfuck. But yeah, it is. We are soon approaching the situation where, you sneeze and you lose your certificates. Oh, he sneezed in a semi-violent way. He's not suitable. They're literally just making up reasons now. Like, why couldn't those police officers phone up Firearms Licensing, right? Okay, maybe you don't trust the guy. He could be saying anything. But you phone up Firearms Licensing. Maybe you look at emails or paperwork that he might have to prove that, or you just give Firearms Licensing a call and see what the situation is. You know, at the end of the day, that is, you know, a serious situation. A police officer phoning up Firearms Licensing and going, look, if you can't tell us what we need to know, we're taking this guy's guns away. You would think that Firearms Licensing would either provide or confirm what was needed. They've just ignored that and gone for sort of the nuclear option and just taken his guns away. As absolutely disgusting, really. Callum95, I heard a guy lost his certificate just because he forgot to sign it after getting it back from variation. See, yes, that is ridiculous in a way, but you are legally required to sign it, right? It's the same with a debit or credit card, right? Technically, if you haven't signed the back of it, a bank or you know, a cashier can, or you know, like a checkout operator or whatever, a server at a store can refuse to serve you, right? It's a requirement of the use of that card to sign it. At least that it's harsh, right? I'm not going to say it's necessarily just or you know, it is fully justified, but there is justification to it. You are required to sign your certificate. If you don't, that is a reason that could be used to take it away. So again, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's understandable. Taking away somebody's guns because they're unable to produce their certificates because they are with Firearms Licensing being processed, that just shows the agenda of trying to just take people's guns away for absolutely no reason. There is no justification in that situation. You know, I've heard of many people, they've gone out at night, they've been stopped by police, and they don't have a copy of their firearms licensing. They don't have a copy of their firearm certificate or shotgun certificate. And what the police have done, and I always recommend to at least have a copy. It's maybe wise not to carry the original around, but if you are transporting your firearms or you are out using them, have a copy of your FAC or your shotgun certificate. It could potentially make your life a hell of a lot easier. But then in these situations where people don't, the police just phone up Firearms Licensing and go, we've got so-and-so here. Is he a license holder? Yes. Does he have permission to, or authority to have these firearms? Fairly, you know, there is a database of what people own, who people are and what they own. It's very easy for police to confirm whether people are in lawful possession of firearms. And it just looks like these officers have tried none of that whatsoever. Callum, do you believe everything anyone tells you? I will challenge it. I don't know necessarily what you mean by that or what you are insinuating. I will take things at face value, and I will also try my best to apply due diligence and find out if it's bullshit. So no, I don't necessarily always believe everything anyone tells me, but if things seem to stack up, then I will take that on faith. And I think I'm fairly good at caveating things, saying this has come from an unconfirmed source, this has come from one of you guys. I try not to, if it's a tip or somebody getting in contact through the channel, I try to make that so. But then likewise, when I'm reading things off of BASC's website, that you can give a little bit more validity to. Pat, I think the NCA should control gun licensing. Yeah, no. No, we'd never be able to own anything again, and blank firers would be on a certificate. I can tell you that for now. Tony Victor, being in possession of your certificate is always best, but even a photo of it on your password protected phone may save you. Yes, again, yeah, good advice there. Have a digital copy as well. And funnily enough, with RFDs, you know, like copies are still quite, they still have a lot of validity. RFDs, I've seen people use copies at shows to be able to buy things, because it's more, when it comes to the RFDs, it's more the details on there that other RFDs need to be able to transfer. And if you show a copy of it, it sort of shows that there is an RFD certificate somewhere, but you're carrying a copy. Again, you don't necessarily want to be carrying the original around, because if you lose it or damage it, that can cause a hell of a lot of problems. So I said I would be talking about the British Shooting Show, specifically the British Shooting Show review. So as I said at the start of the stream, I'm sure many of you are aware because of the videos that have been released for this week, we're at the British Shooting Show this Friday and Saturday. I would have liked to have done the Sunday, but we got back and actually shot a Kentucky Firearms Club match, which I ended up winning the Section 2 division. 2+1 king right here. But yeah, so we're there the Friday and Saturday. Now, before I get into it, I absolutely love the British Shooting Show. As long as there is a show, I will be going to it. But there was, and I think if you go every year, it can only be so different each year, and there's many things that I have to take into account, because it's also very different for myself going to any show, because I'm usually there to work in some capacity, and you know, I've got to look at it very differently. But I still had a fantastic time. It was a good couple of days. I was absolutely fucked afterwards, but met a load of great people, saw some new things, and enjoyed the show. And if you did happen to say hello or you know, bump in and have a chat, well, thanks for taking time out of your show to have a bit of a chat, and you know, maybe talk about the channel or talk about anything. But yes, there's been a lot of negative comments come out of the British Shooting Show since this weekend, and I don't think a lot of them are unjustified. So one of the things that I finally twigged with the British Shooting Show, and I think what a lot of, let's just say, normal ticket holders don't get, is that within the UK, we don't have a gun trade show, right? There is no dedicated gun trade show or firearms trade show here. Like, yes, America, you know, they've got SHOT Show, you know, Europe as a whole, they've got IWA, but really the British Shooting Show is the closest thing to a trade show, and therefore you have two types of people at the British Shooting Show. You have the customers and you have the traders, and I'm not talking about necessarily the stands themselves, but people that are going there for trade purposes. So it's sort of a two-in-one show, and you know, let's be honest about it, the real money is within the trade. That's why you see the likes of Edgar Brothers, Highland Outdoors, Viking Arms, GMK. They always have the biggest stands. They've got the money to be able to do it. And you know, why is GMK there and not selling anything, right? And you've got to ask yourself, you know, there are plenty of stands there selling products that GMK supply. So why are GMK having their own stand at a British Shooting Show if they're not selling anything? Because yes, they are there to maybe get the latest and greatest guns into you know, end consumers' hands, as a bit of a demo, as a bit of a try, and get a bit of a feel. But they are primarily there for the industry. They are there for the trade. They are there for other shops and shop owners and buyers and account holders to go and get their hands on things, to talk business, to place orders, and to do business. So that's why I think sometimes it can feel like a very conflicted show. It does very much feel like a trade show, less than a consumer show. But the biggest criticism overall was the price, and we talked about this last live stream, which was obviously the night before, went up. And there are many different reasons that I think the tickets were the price that they were, and also that you had to pay for parking. A lot of the event industry was decimated over COVID. They had a lot of money that they needed to recoup. They probably were also very nervous about putting themselves on the hook for a huge hall hiring fees. So ways to mitigate that is to charge for parking, to charge for tickets. This did mean that it made it very expensive for families or even partners to go. Even just as a single person turning up on the day, you were looking at £46 for parking and your entrance ticket before you got into the door. That's hard to justify, especially when the actual show itself, and this is maybe more my review element of it, is that yes, there were some new products. And this isn't necessarily the British Shooting Show's fault, but the industry has sort of paused for 2 years. And I can tell you now, it was almost a carbon copy of the 2020 show. Unfortunately, it was a worse copy because a lot of the stands, it was noticeable that a lot of the larger stands had scaled right down. There was a lot more empty space. I don't think I've ever seen an empty stand, and I mean a stand that has been put in place and even has somebody's name across it, business name across it. I think we counted in total at least half a dozen empty stands, and it did feel a little bit rough around the edges. It felt like the show had declined from 2020 rather than increased. Now, up until up to and including 2020, the show was just going strength and strength and strength, and I think they were right. A lot of people say move back to Stoneleigh, a lot of issues would be solved. Not necessarily, because one of the issues is space and hall space and being able to facilitate the number of visitors that the British Shooting Show now gets. And every year up to and including 2020, it got better. There was more to do there, more activities, more stands, and it did feel really, really good. But this year, I don't know. I don't know if it's just the effects of the last 2 years that we've had, but there was a lot of people saying that it very much, based on this year, they were like, it's not going to be around in a couple of years. So it's hard for me because I like supporting all the shows, but I think they need to make some massive changes for next year. If obviously it's a business they want to continue. If they want it to continue, they're going to have to make some changes. They're going to have to get the entrance fee down. They're going to have to sort out the parking. I mean, paying for parking isn't a no for me, but 16 quid. That's up there, right? So reduce the parking, reduce the fees, and get more activities. Yes, there was the same air gun line that you usually have, but there was no live fire. This is the first show that I've been to that didn't have the the lorry range where you can shoot some 2.2, which was very odd. I'm trying to think what else was. Well, comparing it to 2020, there was the airsoft surgeon there. Now, it's very practical, but it was also something else for people to do. They had a have a go stand with some action air guns and the reactive light up targets, whilst there was also a level 3/level 4 standard match, whilst it was a level 1 IPSC action air. It really could have been a level 3 or a level 4. That's the standard it was run to, which again was something for people to go and see that they probably had never seen before, to actually see a practical stage, to see some action air, to talk to competitors and learn a bit more about practical. So that was missing, and I think that was a big plus of 2020, one of my highlights. There were also, on the practical note, I think I can easily count on one hand how many practical-esque stands there were, and I think there really only were 2 or 3 at best. practical shooting is one of, if not the fastest growing area of the sport. It seems to be attracting the most new shooters into the sport, and not to be represented that well is disappointing. And another comment is that there were far less sort of independent, smaller stands to go and actually buy stuff, rather than seeing, you know, sort of wholesalers exhibit. So, you know, I find it very difficult. I don't want to sit here and bash it. Again, it's very cliche to, you know, boo down the British shooting show. I'm not one of those people. Every year that there is a British shooting show, I will go. I always have a lot of fun, but I think it's worth it for me because of everything else that I do. Maybe even video creation aside, but just going and talking to people in the trade, you know, seeing, you know, putting faces to names, you know, maintaining relationships and networking is incredibly valuable for anybody in the trade. So, you know, I will always go and do that. I can understand though a lot of just general ticket buyers not being happy. I mean, you know, to sum it up, we got there about midday. I think we got into the show about 11:30 on the Friday. And before I even got the camera out, I was like, let's just go walk around it. Let's go spy, see, you know, get a feel for what we might want to film or where we might want to go. And it took us about 2 hours. We weren't going particularly fast. You know, yes, we didn't go into every single stand, but I don't need to go into a handbag stand. I've got enough. It's like, right, that's a pork scratching stand, not interested in that. That's a handbag stand, not interested in that. What else was there? And I sort of looked at it, I was like, what the fuck is that doing here? You know, it's like, you've got that, but you haven't got, you know, like a firing solutions or a practical shooting supplies or something like that. It's like, okay, you know, obviously an industry that can afford the expensive stands. And I think one of the biggest things that they could do to change it is maybe have an A and a B hall, and have like a reduced rate sort of traders hall, and then you have the big boys, you know, the glitz and glams and the massive stands. That could be a way of moving forward on it. And like even using like the marquee out in the car park, you know, literally have like the bargain bucket show element outside of the main hall. So yeah, I think they certainly need to sort out the ticket price and the parking price. They need to get more to do in the show, more activities. They need more smaller stands, not just practical, but, you know, gun shops and smaller cottage industry traders, something new, something that, you know, lowering the price so that emerging businesses can afford to take that gamble and exhibit, so that people see something new. I think if they do an element of all that, it will get improved. But, you know, I'm not writing it off. I know there's a lot of people that have, like, looking through the comments on the show's social media, it's overwhelmingly negative, and the common theme is like, I will not be going back. So I really hope that they take on board this criticism, that they, not just mine, but, you know, what people are saying on social media, and they improve the show next year. Like, I'm willing to give them the pass this year. It's been an incredibly difficult couple of years for event organizers and shows like this. So, you know, they've had, in my mind, one hiccup year in the many years that I've been going. I'm not going to sit here and go, I'm never going again. Let's see how they do next year. If it doesn't improve, if there are the same issues, you know, then I think it's really the potential decline of the show. And it probably, if they have another similarly bad year in a way, that could potentially be the nail in the coffin. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I know a lot of you guys that said that you still enjoyed it. It's still a great day out. They just need to get that sort of enjoyment, you know, the value for money. They just need to sort out the value for money overall. If they had more, you know, if it was the same price but they had more to do, that would even it down. But not a lot to do, so, you know, you got to lower that price. Oh, Colin Armstrong. There was a Bitcoin investment company there. Yeah. You know, and they got gin bars and stuff like that. The gin bars were nice, though. There was a brownie stand. And I'm going to be a hypocrite here, right? Because saying, why the fuck do you got pork scratchings? Like, you've got Bitcoin investment, you've got a brownie stand. I did treat Connors to a brownie, and it was awesome. I think he had the Biscoff brownie, and I had a Millionaire's brownie, and it was good. So the brownie stand can stay, because I will again be buying that from them next year. You know, if they're there. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the show. Canon 95. Target shooting show was better. I went to that instead this year. Yeah, I mean, of course, the target shooting show, like, it's very practical-esque. It is going to be more of a favourite. But, you know, it's a growing show, but it was very small. But, you know, compared to the British shooting show, it was pretty tiny. But there was a lot more to see. It's like there was a lot of companies at the target shooting show that actually had a lot of new products, Magload being one of them. But it just felt like we went to a number of stands at the British shooting show, and it was like, what have you got new? We're here to film. What have you got new? And they're like, nothing. Like, literally the same products and stock as we had 2 years ago. We're like, right, okay. But yeah, again, I don't want to be necessarily all doom and gloom. I still very much enjoy the show, but they need to take on this criticism, and they need to improve it for next year. I have every faith they will. I will still be going next year. I would still recommend people to go next year, and just see where it goes from there. In terms of talking about shows, the next show for us is going to be the Northern Shooting Show, which I'm going to say is a very hard to beat show. Given, you know, you want to talk about things to do, the variety. I mean, they haven't been. The last one was 2019, I believe. So there hasn't been a Northern Shooting Show for even longer than the British Shooting Show. But at the last one, you know, they've got archery, they've got axe throwing, they had dog like races, like obstacle races. They have the talks in the tent. The clay line, where you can go and compete, you can go and sort of pay and play, and you can test out new guns. Like, you literally have GMK or Viking there with guns for you to be able to shoot and try. They had the NTSC match, which was like a plate rack match. They had the black powder shotgun shooters. God, they had the live fire range, the 2.2 live fire range. Just so many. You could literally go there and just fill a whole day with just the activities there. Plus, you know, what the Northern Shooting Show does very, very well is it does encourage the smaller businesses. I mean, you know, Magload was one of them. It was the first show that we'd ever done, and it was because we were highly encouraged. And I'll leave it at that. But, you know, we basically had the doors open to us, and it was just silly for us not to attend. So we did, and it was a big eye opener for being our first show. But, you know, it's sort of scary. Oh no, it's not 2 years. It's gonna be like 3 years. The show, yeah, it would have been May 19 that we last went. So yeah, it's going to be 3 years. And in that time, you know, Magload has grown considerably, to the point where we're not going to be in one of the side halls where we're actually, we've signed up for a stand in either Hall 1 or Hall 2. We're hoping Hall 1. It would be nice to be in Hall 1. But yeah, you know, when we went there, Magload was still, you know, quite new, certainly new for me, and was in a much different place than when we first go. But, you know, the owner of the show said, well, the owners were like, yeah, we'd really like to have you there, and they really did everything possible to get us there, which allowed us to go. And there's a lot of other little, you know, outfits that are able to exhibit for the first time, but because of that, so you do get to see new companies and new products, and it is very varied. It's not, you know, just air guns and shotguns. You get all sorts there. So yeah, highly recommend going to the Northern Shooting Show, and hopefully they don't have the same, you know, if it is all down to COVID in the last 2 years, they don't have the same issues, let's say, as the British Shooting Show, but very much looking forward to it. But yeah, that's enough about shows. But yeah, Target Shooting Show, Northern Shooting Show, and British Shooting Show. Every year there is one of them I will be going. Just to add, I haven't actually said it. I said it at the beginning, and I've left you guys alone. But don't forget to hit that like button. There are more people watching than there are likes. If you're watching and not liking, why are you watching? So you should be liking. Should get that put on a t-shirt, right? But the to end on I just want to, Daniel, that's just regular trade show prices for stands. Vikings was 45k. Yeah. Okay, let's just like touch on that. That is probably another thing. Well, it sort of follows on actually from the sort of small cottage sort of industry stands. You know, when you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds for well, it's not thousands of pounds, but it's not particularly cheap to exhibit at the British Shooting Show for a small stand sort of out the back. It's just a difficult commitment for companies to make, and yeah, depending on where you are, it can cost, you know, $6,000. You know, the big stands, again, you can understand just because of the square footage, and the big companies like Viking, like GMK, like that, you know, they can afford it. But the small growing companies, the ones that most, you know, the new stuff that people want to see, you need to find a way to encourage them there to make it more economical. And you know, for us, it's part of the reason that Magload wasn't at the show. We did get pricing for it. We did really want to go, but it's not our target market. It was more than what we'd have ever paid for a show before. And it's like, it's not our target market where, yes, the footfall's higher, but actually we're probably going to sell less. It's going to cost us more than any other show. That's not a winning formula for us. You know, but maybe next year we'll be able to justify it, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, of course, I'll continue on. I will continue on the show thing, but on a positive note, because this is also one of the reasons that I love to go, because it is content. There is still a lot of content to come out from the show. I'm just loading up. So the two videos that have come out so far, the Derriere Lion, of course, I said I would hope to get one of those in for review. But the Derriere Lion, it's the LPAC-1. It's an IPSC practical shotgun out of the box. And it is pretty, like, I don't think there's a single practical gun that comes with a shot saver as standard. So that was, you know, it had all the bells and whistles, everything enlarged. The fact that it's a Derriere and it's Turkish, not a big selling point in my mind. But we have to see the longevity of that, and, you know, how it performs and how it does. Of course, the video that went out yesterday, I can't go to a shooting show, certainly the British Shooting Show, and not talk to Chris at Country Sports Wholesale, and we got hold of he had the new Gen 3 6-36 Razor HD, cracking bit of kit overall. So that video, if you want to learn a bit more about that, then go and check that out. And I would just load up. Really hope it doesn't crash. It's very loading up Final Cut Pro whilst I'm on stream is probably not the best idea. But what else is coming out from the British Shooting Show? Oh, that's great. It hasn't loaded the fucking. Thank you, Final Cut Pro. I'll close it. I'll have to do it from memory. We talked to, I think it's Practical Targets, that has actually started making a lot of the targetry for IPSC matches in the UK, and they actually made the plate rack. If you've like in previous videos when I've done gun reviews and I've used the plate rack, it's that plate rack. But we talked to the owner a bit about the company, and again, that's a company that's growing quite fast. We talked to GMK about I think it's their 25th or 50th anniversary gun. I think it was it's a specific Beretta model, but it's been made in limited numbers as a commemoration for the amount of time that GMK have been selling Beretta, or have been about. Again, watch the video if you want more details, because I can't remember it. We talked to Caesar Guarini about their new gun, an absolutely stunning bit of kit that was a brand new for that show gun. It looks absolutely insane. So Connor's talked to one of the sales reps about that. They've actually offered to send one down to it to actually go on the playground with. So how can we turn down that offer? Talked to Blaser about their F3s. There's nothing particularly new there, but if you want to learn a bit more about shotguns, that video will be coming out. There is also a video that we did with Connors. So Connors was wanted his own clay gun for a while. We are doing a little bit more clay shooting. I want to do some more videos on that, specifically going back to Spitfire shooting ground and filming the ground, because it was one of the like first videos that I did. If you've ever seen that Spitfire shooting ground video, it's changed considerably since then. So I want to go back there and film that, and we are doing more clay shooting. So Connors wanted to get his own clay gun, and we ended up, the video is, buying, the video title is going to be something along the lines of buying a over and under Beretta for 600 quid at the British Shooting Show. And we were successful. He ended up buying a Beretta. I won't say exactly what it is, but a Beretta over and under for £600. It took him a few goes though, and you'll see what I mean. So that will be a dedicated video coming out for that. Another interesting video that I'm actually looking forward to putting out there is warranty for Vortex. Now I don't know, I've actually got the photos. I think I put some of these up on the English Shooting Facebook page, but it's quite a famous scope now. That was a warranty replacement for Vortex in the Country Sports Wholesale. What else? This is what I posted on the English Shooting Facebook page. That is as a result of a lithium battery going boom. And again, people that have watched these streams for a while, you'll know my fear about lithium ion batteries. And that's what they can do. That is a previously molten scope, replaced under warranty. And did I get the binos as well? No, I didn't. So anyway, I've talked for years in all of the reviews that I've done for, on Vortex. One of the biggest selling points is, of course, the lifetime unlimited warranty. So there were a few demo warranty replacements. So I end up, talking with Chris exactly what happened to it and why the warranty covered it, and the few limitations to the warranty that they are. So I think that's going to be a really interesting video, and it comes out to actually sort of categorically show how good the Vortex warranty is. And you'll actually see the clip of that Venom red dot getting broken. It was a nasty fall, and it did the rounds on Facebook. So but yeah, it actually used that, and that's what I always like about the brand, and why I advocate Vortex so much, is because they don't, you don't have to worry about using their kit. You drop your gun, you fall over, you put it in, in a barrel dump or a gun dump, and you smash something. Like Vortex are like, yeah, you were using your scope and it broke, so here's a new one. Or you put your gun down in a safe area and the lithium battery ignites. It's an airsoft gun, obviously, because live fire guns don't need batteries. And Vortex are like, yeah, and that's what I love specifically about that lithium ion battery fire case is it's not like that. The scope was never intended to take that sort of abuse. Using it during a competition and falling over, like, you'd be like, well, yeah, you'd expect the scope to like live up to what in the sort of environments that you're going to expose it to. But yeah, that's I think a really interesting video that's going to come out. I'm forgetting loads. Did a little clip with Oceana Defense, who bring in the Walther PPQ, the very interesting gun on their stand. There's a little snippet of that going out, and I think that's about it. I don't think there's anything more to come. Maybe, don't know. But anyway, lots of content, and again, that's why I like going to the shows. There's a lot of content to be made, a lot of videos to show you guys, so you will see over the period what the show's about and what was there. But yeah, in terms of this weekend, as I've already said, tomorrow we're actually heading off to Northern Ireland to Nizza. I will be filming as much of that as possible. I believe we're taking part in a level 1 handgun match, so I'll might even dust off the GoPro and get some footage of that. But yeah, flying out there tomorrow. I'll be posting on the English Shooting Facebook page. If you want sort of live updates of news or any sort of topics, it tends to always go out on the Facebook page first, so go and like that page and even join the English Shooting Facebook group as well, as you'll see all of this stuff happening as I do it. But yeah, be posting about that, be filming as much of that as possible, and I'm hoping to be able to shoot as many different handguns out there as possible as well, to sort of add to the video and really show you what Nizza has to offer. And I'll just give the comments a check. Thank you for hosting English Shooting. Good to see you're getting your shows ramped up. We're still human, not cyborgs, so we thrive on in real life interactions. No, absolutely. Again, that's just one thing that the shows can't replace. Going and shaking somebody's hand. Yes, we shook hands, and seeing somebody face to face, and that's why I think there's always going to be a place for the shows. Are you going to make videos on your NI trip? I've always wanted to see the gun scene there. Yes, well, as I said, I will be. I don't know if you're necessarily going to see the what the gun scene is like, but you're certainly going to get a very good view of Nizza. I know I've already made a bit of a tour video, but I'm definitely going to be redoing that, and I think it's going to be interesting to show what guns a Nizza member has access to, and I think that will be justification enough for you guys to actually sign up and get out there and get involved yourself. Post Glocks. We've got a Glock fanboy here. Don't worry, you're in good company. Yes, they got CZs there. Drum mags in the UK. Drum mags are legal here. Are you allowed to use? I don't know. What are you talking about? Post feats. Wonderloaf. Jesus. You've got to join my OnlyFans page for that sort of stuff. All right. But right, guys, I am, before I head off, don't forget, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed. But I'm going to call it there because I need to actually go and now pack for Nizza. But yeah, I'll be, again, posting on the Facebook page and trying to film as much of it as possible. But I really hope that you've all enjoyed this evening's stream. I hope it wasn't sort of all too doom and gloom. We like to try and keep it light where we can, but of course we do this every single week, 7:30 PM UK time on every Thursday. So if you did like the stream and you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that like button. It really does make a difference, and I hope that you all have a fantastic week ahead, whether you're going out to Nizza to shoot handguns or you're going to be heading down your local club for a bit of a plink. Do it safely and have fun, and also try and see if you can take somebody new shooting as well to the range. Try and introduce somebody to this wonderful sport. But yeah, have a fantastic week, everyone. Lots of content to come soon that's being worked on, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, as always, I hope to see you soon.